Congressman Doug LaMalfa with us now. Thank you so much for taking some time to be here. So we just found out in the past couple of hours here that we are going to get federal relief. President Trump going ahead and pushing that through after first denying it. Take us through that process on how that worked.
Well, certainly. FEMA has certain requirements, certain thresholds that have to be met to make a declaration. And so initially, it must have been a close call, and so the president didn't follow through with that. So several of us got on the phone with the White House and were able to help push that back across the line to have them relook at that, because again, that's going to be very tough for our very rural communities here in California. And I think the president's been here a few times now in Northern California, and so he knows what we're talking about up here. So I'm glad he's able to take another look at that and get some of our feedback from myself and my other colleagues, Mr. McClintock, Mr. Mike Garcia from North LA County, and of course Kevin McCarthy, our California leader. We're all able to help weigh in on that.
Good. What was his initial reason for withholding that federal funding?
I think it comes down to the FEMA having, again, a threshold of how high the losses are projected. But if we update those losses, since it's been a few weeks now, I think it helped push that threshold over the top. Plus, I think the president, just having heard our pleas on that, was able to say, all right, we need to get this done.
So it was nothing political originally?
Well, no, I don't think it's any of that. I think, for a state with a governor that's been from day one fighting with the White House, I think it's remarkable as well as we've done with some of that, because, so we want the governor to engage on this and help as well, too. I understand he called the White House, so it's all, hopefully it all works together, because the people need that. They don't need more politics,
Exactly, that's my point. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, now that we're going, we know this funding's coming in. How is this funding going to be distributed throughout the counties? Who's going to get the funding, and how does all of that work? How does it decipher out?
Well, it's tiered out for first the emergency that's at hand with getting the fire out, and then the first hazardous things that need to be removed, down power lines, trees that might be falling across the road. And at that point, there's people that still need to have housing that have been displaced from day one. So it also helps aid in covering some of their housing needs. And like with the campfire, they brought in the FEMA trailers, which took a while. It got there. So I don't know that we'll have a big enough magnitude with the Slater fire up there that it will require quite that effort of that. But it'll still help provide for housing and the aid people need to be able to hold their breath long enough so we can get things back a little more settled and get housing back up there again.
And then I know you were just talking about it. You're talking about kind of talking to the president, convincing him why this was important, pushing that through. Talk to us a little bit about your role in this and how you did that, and what that conversation was like. Well,
immediately upon the heels of the Slater fire, we went up and toured there with a couple of my state legislative colleagues too, the Dollies, and we knew that we had a big problem there, so we worked with the county, worked with the tribes up there, and really had a good rapport on that. So we need to do all this together so that we have the best possible effect. And then we linked the Slater fire, and also what is known as the Devil fire, which is adjacent, and then working with the other fires around the state that were in the same occurrence timeline to try and get this declaration. So early on, we were having conversations with the White House staff and my other colleagues as well, too. So that's the most effective way to get it done. And then they had to go through their process, and FEMA came to their determination. And so here, yesterday, they didn't think it met the threshold. So we convinced the president, several of us, and his staff to take a harder look at it, and we got the result we wanted.
Did you speak directly to the president about this one?
No, I talked to his staff there.
Right.
Mr. McCarthy has a pretty good hotline with the president there too, so that's good to have as a Californian with that relationship we have there as well.
Great. I mean, this has been a record-breaking fire season. Over 4 million acres has burned in the state of California. It's still mind-boggling when you think about that. What is going on here? What is the solution to get this under control? Because there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of anxiety out there from folks here in the North State about these fires and the fact that they're growing exponentially every year. Well, what's the answer, Congressman?
Well, the problem is a big part of it is we're overloaded with fuel. We've been through several drought years. We had a couple of good rain and precipitation, snowpack years, and we have a lot of dry years. And so what are we going to do about that situation? We have to address the amount of material we have grown in the forests and the grasslands and other wildlands that hasn't been managed for a long, long time, and the environmental blockage that we have to get the work done. You know, we get lawsuits over that. Even a post fire over there on the coast there, 400,000 acres burned a couple years ago. We want to do a 7,000 acre project to clean up along roadways and make it safer. You know, roadways are one of the areas where a lot of fire occurs from, and that was blocked by a court after a lawsuit. So it's very frustrating to get the work done that needs to be done. And some of it's not going to be popular. We're going to have controlled burns. We can't do it all by you know, light logging or brush clearing. Some of it is burning off grasslands and things to make buffers and to have the ability, if a fire starts, you can stop it there. You know, more grazing is necessary. Our people in the cattle business have known this for, you know, many decades, that they can be part of the solution. Yet we see the grazing permits dropping off more and more from BLM and from the Forest Service areas too. So the solutions keep being thwarted by environmental problems and then slowness of, like up in Feather Falls, we had a work that was being done up there by the Fire Safe Council folks was blocked for 17, 18 months by CEQA process, an environmental review process that the state has, that they just weren't getting done, and we lost out on $800,000 worth of grant money that they could have been putting in place and helping save areas around Feather Falls, Lake Madrone, and a lot more work they could have been doing.
Governor Gavin Newsom, very vociferous in his stance, saying that this is climate change, that these fires are raging bigger because of climate change. What's your response?
Well, we can have that debate in a separate conversation if you want. You know, climate change, of course it changes. It changes often annually and then over the eons too. So the big discussion is, well, are we going to tax people on that idea that it's man-made and then put it all into something like high-speed rail? Yeah, that's where they're going with that. My deal is, what are we doing about the weather conditions as they change, as the drought seasons come upon us? You can go debate that fight separately. We need to be storing water if we don't have the snowpack like we used to. So that's more water storage on that hand, and then we need to be doing a lot more forest and wildlands management. You know, it's going to be that prescribed burn, it's going to be logging, it's going to be grazing, and those other tools that are helpful towards that.
Great. Anything else you want to talk about with the fires? Anything else that you feel is important?
Well, I'm just very pleased the president was able to, you know, sort out what was going on here and listen to our voices on that as we represent the people up here that are in need, and move on this in the direction it was that we asked.
And again, you don't think anything political there with the initial denial?
No, no. I think it really comes down to, there's been a lot of disasters and such, and that I think there is a level of accountability needs to happen. Did it really reach the threshold? And if we were a kind of a wobbler on that, we had to take a closer look, update the numbers on the losses there. And I think he decided, hey, this is the right thing.
Okay. Quickly here, we're starting to run out of time. I do want to talk about coronavirus. We can throw that up on the screen behind us real quick. In the booth. Get rid of fires, throw up something coronavirus related. There we go. Tehama County.
Those are scary looking, yeah.
I know. Okay, so last week, or I'm sorry, this week, Tehama County, dubious distinction, being number 2 in the state when it comes per capita to coronavirus cases. We're starting to see Shasta County cases rising, businesses there having to open and close, this teeter-totter back and forth. High numbers in Butte County right here. What's going on here? What's the solution here? Do we open everything back up, or do we close everything? Where do you stand with this, and what's going on with these numbers here in the North State?
Yeah, great question. I think we need to do a lot better job of sorting out what the real sources are. Now, I don't think it's somebody's salon downtown or a barber shop or a restaurant that is doing a good job of distancing and, you know, proper wearing of the mask in and out and all that. You know, I heard this deal about wear a mask in between bites. I think that's reaching absurdity, but that said, why don't we micro-target where the real problems are coming from? And it isn't every single business in town. It isn't every single location. It may be something happening on with a community event. It might be happening with a family event. You know, let's get it narrowed down to what it really is instead of making a whole county-wide declaration. I represent Nevada County, and, you know, in the city of Grass Valley in Nevada City, they're very frustrated because they seem to have most of the infections are coming from the far eastern side of the county there. And so you'll probably see something similar with things going on with cultural events or what have you in these counties. You know, maybe it's going on at the campus, you know, that they shut the campus back down. So let's find out what the real sources are before we just blanket stop everything.
Do you think that the county health departments need to be tasked with doing that and doing a better job of really honing in? You know, for instance...
Well, they have one mission, is to, you know, assess the whole picture.
Right.
I think the way we gather information and feed that to them, but then the decision makers that are elected to do so also need to take a broad spectrum of this and help make that decision instead of handing it over to an unelected official.
How much transparency do you think there needs to be with the health department and where these outbreaks occur? For instance, about a month ago, I asked the Butte County Health Department about an outbreak, and they wouldn't give us a specific location, citing HIPAA. I said that doesn't fall under HIPAA laws because we're not naming names. You're like, you're right, but we're still not going to release that location. Do you think that when we have an outbreak that these health departments should be releasing the location to keep people safe?
If they believe there's a privacy issue there, okay, then we need to have that conversation. So, but the information still needs to be out there so it can be helpful for people to make decisions. If there is a hot spot in a particular place, people at least need to have enough information to know not to do whatever that activity is. And I still believe it comes back to it. It isn't because of a barber shop or a hair salon or a restaurant or a hardware store or a lot of other things. I mean, there's so many businesses that were deemed essential that are still getting to operate. Other ones that are maybe not on that essential list can operate in the same way with the same distancing, the same practices. So the shutdown isn't always fair to them, especially if the health department has information that the hot spot has nothing to do with them. We need to take a lot more of a micro area approach to this instead of a county-wide wave of the wand.
And you know, we have so many people who have died from this virus, unfortunately, and the models are predicting more. Come the winter months, it's going to get worse. We've talked about that impact of it and how we're losing people, at an alarming rate this year. There's also the financial impact of it and the economical impact of it that these businesses are going to take in the long run. You know, what's your concern about both of those?
Well, if you look at what the original projections are by the CDC, it was 2 million deaths, okay? And so if we see the figures are around 200 plus thousand, that's 1/10. Now, we can't just talk about statistics and just raw numbers and not know realize this is human beings and this is real people being affected in real families. So they're all regrettable, but in the terms of what is realistic as far as a risk-free society or one that is doing the best to manage risk, then we have to weigh that out. We have to put everything on the table as far as all the options, you know, because kids need to be in school. Businesses need to operate. They need to produce the things that still people need. You know, my farm can't just shut down because of that, because someone has to be growing crops.
Right.
You know, so it really has to be a broad spectrum that we're looking at of all the inputs. What is the total harm versus benefit to all of society with what we do? So in the coming months, you know, there's a lot of hope being banked on the vaccine. I don't know that that's going to be the be-all, end-all.
Right.
Will the virus run its course, you know, or will this be like something that, you know, others that have been vaccinated for have taken many, many decades to work out?
Experts are saying now probably not. It doesn't look like that. It says it's going to run its course because it's so prevalent out there now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pandemic, not an epidemic. So, you know, it might take that vaccine to get back to normal. But, you know, it's hard to say, right? I guess.
Yeah, and when will the vaccine be available? How fast can it be administered? And what is its percent of success? You know, other vaccines like for the flu don't have a high, you know, they don't always approach a 100% success ratio.
And the flu mutates. Is this going to mutate? There are going to be different strands of this.
You know, from what I've picked up, it doesn't seem like this is a mutating type. This is one that seems to be much more lab-oriented that came out of Wuhan and doesn't have the ability to mutate, is what I've understood so far.
I have read studies, and these are studies that say there are three different, they know three different strands of COVID-19, specifically COVID-19, not just coronavirus, that are out there already. I did read another study that said it seems to be mutating faster, and this was interesting because people are wearing masks. It's finding a way to start spreading even when you're wearing a mask now because, you know, again, viruses do mutate. So that's alarming.
You find that with a lot of things in
early.
nature, you know, because for us, a simple thing like controlling weeds in crops, you can control them with certain materials, and after a while they mutate from that, and they're immune to that material. So that's a part of nature, and we have to figure out how to deal with it and be adaptable as we go along the way. But we're also a country that can't be shut down to the extent we are permanently and have any way of being successful as a society, especially if others around the world aren't following the same rules and want to take advantage of our disarray that we're in.
Last topic here real quick, because I know we got to roll. Let's talk SCOTUS. We got Supreme Court back there now. Get rid of coronavirus. There we go. Let's talk about the Supreme Court of the United States. Judge Amy Coney Barrett testifying. You got a front row seat to that. Walk us through that process a little bit. Are you confident the Republicans are going to be able to get that nomination in there before November's election?
Well, Judge Barrett did a remarkable job in the way she handled herself in those days of grilling there, and it's pretty tough. And you know, there are certain senators seemingly trying to set traps for her on that, and you really can't get trapped when it's your belief system, and when you know the law and you know what the Constitution was originally intended for, not to be a living, breathing document, but one that stands the test of time. And she backed that up, I think, from a question from Senator Sass, I believe. And so, to me, it shows that she's right on the right track for interpreting and protecting the constitutional values, not today's whims, not today's fads, or whatever people feel like is popular today. And that's important to have a cornerstone, to have something that stands the test of time.
Is this the right thing to do, pushing this through, trying to push this nomination through just before an election?
There's arguments on both sides of that. No one's going to, if they're with my opinion, they're going to be with it. If they're against it, they're against it. So right now, the situation would be, if we're going to have a difficult post-election legal situation, we could end up with a 4-4 with an even number on there. So maybe it's important to have an odd number, so if a decision is needed by the Supreme Court, it doesn't come down to that. That said, every president, no matter who he or she is, Democrat or Republican, has the prerogative to fill any empty judge seat or any other position as they see fit on that timeline. That's part of their charge. That's what President Trump said he would do in his campaign.
Abraham Lincoln didn't do it. He didn't fill that seat. He waited until that presidential election.
Well, there's more to that story than was on the surface of that too. But that said, the president, his prerogative, he promised to do that, and so it's up to the Senate on how they want to handle it, right? And so they're handling it. And again, with the quality of a person that Judge Barrett is, like, man, she was stellar up there in the way she handled, the blank sheet. She knows this in and out. So there'll be those that disagree with her politically because they want people that can manipulate the Constitution versus those that protect it as it is.
And those who agree with it too.
Yeah. So so the Senate is doing their process. I believe she'll be confirmed. I believe almost every Republican, one might waver, but I think all the rest will, and it's even possible it might attract 1 or 2 Democrats, but who knows?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Congressman Doug LaMalfa, thank you for taking some time with us. We appreciate it.